Hello and welcome to Focus on Parliament on Civic Space TV, brought to you by the Center for Constitutional Governance. I am Kwagala, your host, in yet another travesty of democracy. The 11th Parliament has been once again caught in the crosshairs of another corruption scandal. This time round, after the President dished out 100 millions to each legislator in an apparent attempt to facilitate the realization of a yet to be identified political aim. On today's edition of Focus on Parliament, we discuss the implications of this development and what it could portend for the country's political landscape. Joining me to discuss this topic is a panel of distinguished personalities whom I now have the honor and the pleasure to introduce to you, our esteemed viewers. Let me start from my immediate left is Professor Mwambutsya Ndebesa, a distinguished academic and a professor of history. Professor Ndebesa is also a renowned political commentator. Prof, it's a pleasure to have you on the program. Say hello to the viewers.
Pleasure to be here and pleasure to be with you, the audience, and good morning to you. And I'm glad to be here to again have a dialogue on issues of national importance.
Thank you for joining us, Professor. Next to Professor is Mr. Timothy Chemonges, the Executive Director of the Center for Policy Analysis and the Parliament Watch. Tim, it's a pleasure to have you. Say hello to the viewers.
Thank you, Isaac. I'm really glad to be here, but also be joined by colleagues in the panel today to weigh in on the ongoing discussions within the country, but also primarily within Parliament. The question of financing legislative work through alternative means is very interesting, and I think we'll be delving in it further. Thank you.
Many thanks indeed. Alternative means, whatever that means, Timothy will expound on that. But next to Timothy is Mr. Apollo Tusiime, a senior journalist covering Parliament and also a member of the Uganda Parliamentary Press Association. It's a pleasure to have you. Dogu, say hello to the viewers.
Thank you so much, viewers and the panel here. I'm pleased to be part of this space and I'm looking forward to fruitful deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Apollo. And of course, last but not least, is a security and governance expert who also is a political economy researcher and the associate director at the Center for Constitutional Governance. Dr. Tolit Atiya, many thanks for joining us. Say hello to the viewers.
My pleasure to be here this morning again. A very good morning to our viewers, and we hope we're going to have an interesting discussion. I really think, Isaac, in my view, I think we should just do away with Parliament. This Ugandan Parliament is a disgust.
What a verdict. Well, Dr. Tolit will have the latitude to justify his viewpoint. But let me start with Apollo.
Yes, please.
Who is our watchtower and listening post, to borrow the words of the President, to describe members of the UPDF in Parliament. You are observing proceedings in Parliament as a journalist. Have you been able to verify the report by the leader of the opposition that during the course of this week, man has exchanged hands, ostensibly to thank members of the 11th Parliament for having successfully passed the Coffee Amendment Bill, but also to consider successfully the amendment targeting the UPDF statute to reintroduce components to have civilians tried before the General Court Martial. Have you verified the authenticity of that report?
Yes, thank you so much, comrade. It is quite challenging to verify such a report, I must admit. But coming from looking back at the background of such incidents, you believe that the alleged culprits would have to devise means of concealing their footmarks. The reports, of course, the first claim came from the leader of opposition, and by the virtue of his office, you can have confidence that the leader of opposition had gathered some information before making such a serious statement. But looking back at the previous incidents, you have the courage to think that it is true something of that nature could have happened. Because when it first happened, at least in 2005, when Parliament was amending the Constitution to remove term limits, it is just the same reasons, the same response that we are getting today is what we actually got from the authorities at Parliament and elsewhere. The response is that all the monies given to members of Parliament have to go through a statutory process. If you have evidence to prove that the money was given out, bring it. That is the response we have got from the leadership of Parliament and the leadership of the National Resistance Movement political party. So they, even the Speaker of the Deputy Speaker, who was the Speaker in chair 2 days ago, also made the same response, saying that he, as a member, has not received a coin. But, like I said, it is really not easy to prove or to get that concrete evidence that money changed hands. And like I said, if it happened in 2005, later happened in 2011, the same allegations came out in 2017 and 2022, even in 2020 during the COVID time. But what happened when those allegations were made? We later found out that the members of Parliament actually received the money. So that gives us confidence to actually think that it could be true.
Apollo, 2 days ago overnight, the leader of the opposition uploaded a video on his social media accounts to buttress those claims. What is your analysis of that footage?
I find it very disturbing looking at that video of people, I may not authoritatively say they are members of Parliament, but looking at many people at Parliament, I mean at that hour of the night. What activity was happening around Parliament at that time, because it is alleged it was captured between 9 and 10 in the night. What was happening? What activity could have been happening at Parliament at that time? Because we know parliamentary business starts at this time, ends at this time.
Like, could have been night prayers.
He says it could be night prayers. Well, from my own analysis, those are the things that can make us believe that these allegations are true. And yes, they could be true.
Thank you, Dogo Apollo. Timothy, you are a representative of a public watchdog covering parliamentary proceedings and business. You monitor the goings-on in Parliament. What is your reading of this report that members of Parliament have received 100 million each from the President to facilitate the realization of a certain political project? Anything to do with the timing? Is it suspect to you?
Yeah, so I have had an interaction with quite a number of members of parliament who are my personal friends on both sides, really. And while those in the opposition, the ones that I've talked to, suggest that they are yet to receive the money, those on the other side said that they did receive the money. And they confirm receipt of the money. But also,
have they pointed out for what purpose?
now, the purpose is not very clear, really. The purpose is not very clear, but it can be attributed for even when you engage with them, they seem to speculate, and they are saying what you are highlighted there, passing of the coffee bill, others saying the rationalization process, others saying following the recent engagement within the caucus of the party, including. So I think that irrespective of the purpose, I think the point is that individuals have received money, which I think that is very unfortunate in the first place. Secondly, they seem to tell me that this was actually had been discussed some time back for them to receive the money. So it's just a culmination of prior discussions. And maybe the other thing, really, in light of what Apollo highlights, when you look at all the previous circumstances under which members of parliament have received money from the executive or from wherever, and the matter has come out in the public, the individuals who execute this, they do it in a very smart and a very strategic way to ensure that the footprint is not seen. In the most recent, where I think still where you saw Honorable Kwagala came out saying that I've been given 40 million and I'm handing it over. And then there were a bit of discussions here, and there were denials on all sides, saying we received the money from, I think, one of the places around, I think Kati or one of the places around there. And so you find that increasingly, most of these things are happening in a very strategic and in a very clear manner to ensure that, first of all, the trace is not realized. But also, you know, when you look at this specific issue, we must look at it from the broader perspective of the corruption within the country. Yes, Parliament, you see, Parliament holds a very, very core place within our democratic dispensation. But when you look at what is happening in Parliament and look at what is happening within the other ministries and within the other agencies in government, you will see that there is a very, the question of corruption or how resources are illicitly taken away from the budget or they are used by some individuals. Most of those are actually clearly budgeted for. You find that they are within the system. They are smartly organized. And so trying to trace and even successfully prosecuting, if there was need to prosecute such a matter, is extremely hard, because then you can only rely on testimonies, really, from members who, again, while some may be admissible, I think that there is quite a lot of there's quite a lot of subjective opinions in light of some of those things. And so I think that this is really, again, not the first time this is happening. And what you're asking in terms of the timing, in terms of how progressively Parliament has become an institution, a transactional institution, as opposed to, having an institution that seeks to serve the people and seeks to address specific challenges that the society address. Of course, I also should say that looking at the challenges that members of Parliament do face, right from the indebtedness, which is actually one of the biggest challenges that members face there. Many of them are highly indebted for whatever reason. Most of them are indebted, and that affects their liquidity. And so at any point in time, you find members trying to find all ways possible to get something, whether it's 50,000, 100,000, as little as that, to survive. So most of them are in survival mode and trying to see, how do I survive within partly because of the question of indebtedness. And so I think that even when these opportunities of this kind of resources come, you find that they highly welcome it. So looking at that, does this mean that the institution of Parliament cannot, and as Dr. said, should we say that we no longer need the institution of Parliament? I don't know if that's one of the questions you want us to answer later, but I think that there are definitely ways. We still need the institution of Parliament, but we need a radical change on how most of this. But of course, we're also looking at Parliament. See, when you look at Parliament in isolation, you also want to suggest we should disband everything, including the executive, the judiciary should go home, and the legislature. And maybe we find alternative ways of governance. And so it's true that our priorities really are misplaced. And looking at this specific issue of 100 million being given to members, it speaks to our priorities as a country. It speaks to how the leadership envisages or how it interfaces with its people. Because you see today, aid towards health has been cut. Aid towards some of these places have been cut. We should be discussing and trying to see how do we bridge those gaps. But instead, you know, we've turned around and using resources that ideally we should be having towards. So it also reemphasizes and makes the point that I think as a country we are not broke, or we don't have, the assumption that we don't have money is not true.
We just don't have the discipline.
We just don't have the discipline. We just have misplaced priorities, but also we have the poor leadership in place.
Thank you, Tim, for your perspective. Doctor
is very unhappy.
Let me come to you. Timothy seems to suggest that this was an irresistible offer made to the legislators. But I want to understand, do we still have a sovereign parliament? Because our constitutional setup contemplates an independent and strong legislative body which can push back against the government for most of its executive overreaches and whatnot. Is it a mercenary parliament, a transactional parliament, as Timothy is describing? What is it?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And Parliament, yes, and other than Parliament, even the other institutions like Timothy suggests, I think what we now need to do is interrogate literally all our institutions, particularly the levers, the institutions that are seen as levers of democracy. And for me, again, it's not so much the discussions of these institutions per se, but we really need to try to readdress our minds to this whole idea of liberal democracy, and whether it has delivered what it intended to do. Because you see, even if I didn't discuss Parliament and I picked any other, look at, for instance, the police. With the police, I think for the last maybe coming to 10 years, and this is a report coming from a credible government body, which is Uganda, none other than Uganda Human Rights Commission. They have been listing the police and found the police at fault of human rights abuses. And it has been at the top of that list for almost 10 years. You know? Then you find that the same body has continued to exist without any form of inquest, you know, or credible inquest. The few attempts we've had, like the Sebutinde
report
commission, and probably any other small commissions. And by the way, I can go on record on this. There is no single report arising from a commission of inquiry, an official commission of inquiry, since 1986 that has been made public. But we spend money on these commissions. The most recent was the flamboyant
Bamugerere Commission.
and all of a sudden it is just gone. So for me, it goes back to the issue of a nation. And you know, just to retort Professor Ndebesa, I think he really has a serious point. When Professor argues that other than anything else, the most important thing for us is to do nation building, it now raises a lot of questions in my mind. Because you see, this whole thing is cyclical. You have a police that should be the vanguard or at the vanguard of processing justice. But it's the same institution that is found lip-footed. The other institutions that have been put to try and create pillars to afford accountability, including Parliament, are the same institutions that the police goes to year in, year out, and gets its budget funded without any serious, even just reprimand. For instance, I do not know. I would like to check.
Don't forget that the police and the judiciary always top the list of most corrupt institutions in this country.
So yes. So if this Parliament, which is supposed to be at the bridgeway to negotiate our justice, negotiate our democracy, but has let the Flanderers go scot-free, what do you expect of that institution? So, for me, if anybody says they are surprised with what has happened in Parliament, then I just call you a joker.
Doctor, do you think this cash bonanza is one that demands a special inquiry, maybe by the police or the other law and justice order organs?
No, for me, I don't think we should put any more money in any inquiry, because this is a well-orchestrated, calculated, intended, deliberate, and far-rehearsed approach and reliable political approach. I mean, the movement government has done this over and over again. Tusiime just recounted for us 2005 to 2011,
2017,
2020. So all these, are you saying the people seated in Parliament were stooges? Aren't they human beings, even with an ounce of a memory? So there's no need to waste any more money into an inquiry. For me, I would really want to make a civic appeal that we citizens should overthrow Parliament. We need to get back our agency. And I think it's a bigger call for civil society, including academia, including religious leaders, that you see, we are having, and I've always said this, the danger of a single story. We have given opportunity. The NRM narrative seemed to have gotten gravity. It is sold, but for me, I now begin to think it is an oversold commodity and past its expiry date, really. So for me, it's not a question of any piecemeal. We just need to take this bull by the horn. Because in an elitist strategy like the NRM has decided to create, where most of the reward goes to its cronies, then you don't expect to have any checks. So unless you are deliberate to overthrow that entire edifice, you would simply be, you know, moonlighting. You'd simply be jogging. So I don't agree with the idea. There's no need for an inquest. We are going into an election. These boys should not return.
Thank you, Doctor, for your insights. Professor, let me come to you. The cash bonanza at Parliament. As a citizen, what is your first reaction about it, given the context under which it has been processed and reported?
Thank you. Before I talk about my reaction, let me first join my colleagues about the possibility that actually this money was given. The lawyers, you lawyers will tell us there is such a thing like circumstantial evidence.
A prima facie case.
So there is a prima facie case and circumstantial evidence that this money was given. In my language, they say, you know, if you are not sure whether the hyena ate your sheep, at least if you find in a fur in the hyena's feces, you can still suspect that it is this hyena which ate my sheep. So, in a similar way, according to the history of those different times when they have been given that money, but even now, looking at the body language of the members of parliament, including the speaker, this money was eaten or it is about to be eaten. Secondly, there was an allegation from a member of parliament, the leader of opposition. I did not hear anybody raising on a point of taking that leader of opposition to the disciplinary committee. Two, this story appeared in a newspaper, public newspaper. I did not hear anybody saying we are taking it to court. So that means they ate this money or they are about to eat the money. Talking about my reaction, I actually read that story in Monitor yesterday, and I was very disturbed because in the same Monitor story which was pointing out how they have been eating that money, there was a story about a group of people in Sebei. Those minority group, they are called what? The other one. No.
They eat.
No, it's not. It was in the Monitor yesterday. It's another group. Is it the Ndomboro or somebody like this?
Okay.
The
Yes,
Ndomboro.
The Ndomboro group.
They were living in abject poverty, in a situation that is unimaginable. They were displaced from the Elgon National Park, that part that is in the Kapchorwa, the Elgon. In 1999, they have been living in abject poverty, wretched over the earth. They have never been attended to. So the same story appeared in the Monitor. So when you look at that story, against that story of eating that money, you really feel bad and you don't know whether we have a parliament of the people or a parliament over the people. You wonder whether that parliament is for the people or a parliament for themselves. Is it a parliament for the masses? Is it a parliament over the masses? Looking at that Ndomboro group vis-a-vis that money that was given as political corruption. It was very, very, very unfortunate in that case. So, what can be done? I think colleagues were talking of leaving parliament or whatever. I think it is time we rethought the whole notion of democracy here and political engagement to think about non-elective politics. You know, people think that engaging with the public or engaging in democracy, which is the rule of the people, it must always be through our representatives or the parliament who are elected. I think we need to go for non-elective politics. The non-elective politics here would include things like peaceful demonstrations, protests, Occupy, like in the USA they do, the Occupy movement. It would involve people, things like writing letters, shouting, demonstrations, boycotts, and the like. We can be innovative and creative and think about non-elective politics like the social media people are doing in this exhibition. They are exhibiting and embarrassing people. The cartoon people are also involved. So we need to go for the non-elective politics, because elective politics has returned the people who are selfish. And I think it goes back to the whole notion or a narrative of the liberation. You know, first of all, somebody has written an article which excited me about the curse of liberation. It terms it the curse of liberation. In all these liberation countries, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Rwanda, Uganda, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Eritrea, those liberation groups who are supposed to have liberated us from the oppressors have taken it up to themselves that they are entitled. They have got an entitlement mentality. They are supposed to rule us whether we like it or not. You remember when General Muhwezi told the Chief Justice, Principal Judge Ogora that, where were you? In other words, we are not supposed to talk because they liberated us. And there is that entitlement, and they are not going anywhere because they liberated us, they killed the animal, they must first eat it. I don't know until when. You know, this priest got frustrated so much. This is Father Batanyenda. Is one of the priests in Chemonges there in Chika. Gaetano Batanyenda or somebody like that. He said, we are tired. And remember, he was a movementist because he came to see I remember, on the ticket of movement. He was appointed, actually special appointed there. But he is now frustrated, and he said, but we are tired of this blood business. That if you want the blood, let's go to the blood bank in Nakasero and return your blood. It is a frustration, a reflection of the frustration that Parliament can dispense itself that money when the Ndorobo there, people are suffering and have been suffering since 1999 and nothing is done. He comes from Kapchongo.
Even the IC MP.
He probably knows them. The IC
MP said the other day on the floor of Parliament that there is no single home amongst the IC that has ever had an iron sheet. 60 years.
This group, then the world said they have never received any money like PDM. They have never received this one of the youth fund. They have never received anything. But much more so for the Ndoboro is that they were evicted from their land by the state that was in Mount Elgon to create Mount Elgon National Park. They were officially evicted, and therefore they were supposed to be compensated, and they have never been compensated. But I'm giving that one as an example, that we are squandering all these monies when there is need for spending it on social services. You go and get the statistics of the education, in the education sector. There is this horrible thing they are calling dropout rates. There is another name they use. The completion rate. Completion rate. When you look at the completion rate, it is below 30%. And yet we are spending a lot of money to these MPs. They already get a salary and allowances of over 30 million per month each. They are given all the other privileges. They are given allowances for sitting. How come that you add on this money to them, which is actually the seat of political corruption, and you turn around and you say, you are a parliament of the people? No. And you are a parliament for the people? No. And you are a government of the people? No. And you are a government of the masses? No. It is a government over the masses.
Professor, before we go in for a break, do you have any imagination as to what the purpose of this money could be, given the time?
As in the past, because it has been happening anyway, it has become a tradition. It is now an established political tradition in Uganda. That political corruption is established. It is an inducement for the members of parliament to pass the law or a budget according to the wishes of the government. And most likely, it is about this business of the court martial. The judgment of the Supreme Court was that the court-martial should only be a preserve of the serving soldiers, not civilians. But now they want to bring it back and say that no, it is because they elect judges who are professional and qualified, which is not the case. Even if you bring those judges who are professional, who are lawyers, they should strictly limit the court-martial to disciplinary issues of the military, not trying civilians. And then they are arguing that you can now appeal to the higher courts after that case. But appeal when? What will happen is that when you are politically charged and the state is abusing the justice system, they will charge you under the court-martial. They will try you for I don't know how many times, an end. You will be tried, you remain in the court-martial, possibly even in prison, in perpetuity. So how can you appeal when the trial has been postponed? Like these Noop boys, for example, who were arrested about 5 years ago. They have always been in prison. The trial has never ended. So when will they appeal? So they want to use it as, they want to abuse the court-martial and arrest a political dissident or somebody who is having a divergent view. They take you to the court-martial as a civilian, a political opponent, and they try you there endlessly. They will try you endlessly, so you will not have the opportunity to appeal, and they will go and do their business. So I imagine the money is for inducement to the members of parliament, and they have accepted the inducement, and they have always accepted the inducement, and that's why I have said that the parliament is no longer an institution safeguarding the democracy in this country and safeguarding human rights, and it is an elected parliament, and so the elections in Uganda have become illegitimate, not only because they have been manipulated and rigged, but because also the members of parliament elected representing the people actually are not representing the people. They are representing their stomachs. They are the president's representatives, and they are not a parliament of the people. They are a parliament of themselves. They are not a parliament for the people. They are a parliament over the people, and we should look for non-elective politics in this country if we have to bring the country to the path of democracy.
Thank you, Professor, for sharing your reflections. Focus on Parliament now takes a short break. Do stay with us. We'll see you back shortly.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back. In this segment, we continue discussing the events surrounding the cash bonanza in Parliament, where the President has disbursed 100 million to each legislator for the facilitation of a mysterious political project. Dr. Tolit, what does this tell us about the attitude of the President to governance?
Yeah, well, I think more than anything else, it only accentuates his open, you know, distastement to liberal democracy. I mean, the President Museveni has always played, you know, what you'd call the second fiddle. He has been very good at making statements, utterances, lauding democratic principles, but when it comes to action, I mean, just look at it. We're, for instance, going into the election season. All the election cycles we've had, it has been very clear that he knows that there cannot be a fairly credible election in a situation where you have the, whatever you call them, the referees or arbiters, all sort of leaned and inclined in one direction. I mean, in any election, one is that you expect in the competition, you'll expect disputes. And therefore, at some point, you'll need judges. Museveni has insisted to continue appointing his judges. We have never got into judicial meritocratic system where you find, yes, we have a Judicial Service Commission, but names are selected and he still endorses. There is a new practice in the world. For instance, we saw what happened in Kenya. Anybody who chooses or wishes or aspires to be a judge goes through open public vetting. Because the position of judge is that serious, you know, and that brings a lot of credibility and clout to the system. The commissioners of the Electoral Commission, in a multi-party system or in a political plurality system, you would expect that the other stakeholders should equally have a say. But you have a commission with appointed commissioners. You know, just look at the principle of styridicis. Just how, where do you find the balance? You cannot. I mean, everybody is looking after their bread and butter. So, you shift, come to say, for instance, look at how President Museveni has flagrantly influenced the processes of the election of the Speaker of Parliament. Okay? The very last one was serious, where the President is a stranger to the House. He can be invited, but in this one, he has written and demanded to be invited. What kind of guest is that? So, the point I'm trying to make is that when you interrogate the credentials of both President Museveni, the NRA, NRM, and its claim to democracy, you find that it is largely discounted. So at the end of the day, and maybe even before I leave this, you know, for instance, that on record, in spite of the fact that we have corruption as a scourge in this country, you know that we do not have any government official, minister or otherwise, that has been squarely tried, convicted, and jailed. There is none. There is none. No single minister of Museveni is in prison for corruption. But look at the figures we have. Look at what the IGG is saying. Look at the Auditor General. Look, Museveni himself is decrying corruption. So it is a circus, Isaac. It is a circus. So I really would also like to lend my weight to what Professor Ndebesa has said and what the other colleagues have put across. That we have come right, to the red line, where we have come face to face, with our tormentor. It's like meeting your tormentor and being asked, then what would you tell your tormentor? And I really think that for me, the words of Nelson Mandela really resonate when there's that episode when he came out of prison and decided to invite one prison warder, a sergeant that sort of overlooked his affairs, particularly when he left Robben Island and was being held at the safe house as they were negotiating. And this guy was astounded when he got the invitation. I cannot, the name is difficult to pronounce. I don't seem to remember it. But the issue is that when they met, he thought that Nelson Mandela was, going to torment him, because he was now president, was designated president. So many wild things went to his mind. But they simply had a conversation, were able to have a meal. And he told him, you see, I just called you to thank you, to say that for the good things you managed to do, thank you. Because that is all you could do under the circumstances at the time. And for the wrong things you did, I forgive you. Because at the end of the day, we were both captives. So my liberation is equally your liberation. And I think this is the mentality that the people sitting in power should begin to realize. Many of the political elites, the business elites, the cronies, they are acting as if, they want to be a tomorrow. We need to start collecting ourselves as citizens and begin to realize that if we need a better tomorrow, then we need conversations amongst ourselves. We need to pick some basic principles. We need to think about some serious human values, because we know where we are coming from. Even our constitution is very clear. So we just need to remind ourselves of these basics and be able to say, you know what? We can be able to say, let the past be the past and let us start anew. But we cannot continue with this kind of jungle mentality.
Thank you, Doctor. Doctor proposes a conciliatory approach to power and governance. Ndugu Apollo, what do you make of the emerging reports from the parliamentary opposition political leadership to demand that members of the opposition that have taken these monies refunded back? Is this a viable way of doing things? Will it yield?
I suppose they are serious about what they are doing, what they are suggesting, because this is not the first time we have witnessed such efforts from the opposition. If I can take you back to just recently, 2022, when Honorable Kagabo returned the 40 million. It was his own colleagues who were actually asking him where he got the money, and he should return back the money to where he got it from. But what happened, and what happened later? What exactly happened?
He got frustrated and joined the movement. And
so,
joined eating.
So there is a problem that when it comes to such a, I may call them privileges of members of parliament, there is a collective consensus. There is a consensus between both sides of parliament. But I after all, appreciate the efforts of those, because I don't believe that all of them are corrupt. There must be people who have integrity in that house on either sides of Parliament. But I have certain particular concerns I wish to share with you. I want us to look back at how the monies involved in these cash bonanzas have been, the amount has been exponentially growing. From in 2005, it was 5 million. 2011, it was 10 million. 2017, it was 29 million. Here we are speaking about 100 million. Actually, in 2022, it was 40 million.
40 during the COVID period.
Now we are talking about 100 million. I don't know how much will be in the next cash bonanza, but I want you to think of what
is there a method?
What is happening? Because you cannot say it is because of inflation. No.
No inflation.
No. It is, me, I look at it as
Negotiation power.
Yeah, not only that. Me, I look at it as the thieves are now negotiating for much more. They are becoming
their negotiation capacity.
They are becoming more shameless in their negotiations now, because you will one time hear them now taking 1 billion each. Because
are you suggesting that these parliamentarians are holding the president and trust of
yes, because there were calculations all over social media. 100 million times 559 MPs, and you can look at that figure now. And then you hear how much was allocated to Mulago Hospital, National Referral Hospital, in the next budget, the budget for the next financial year. And then you again think of the priorities like Timothy talked about. Another concern is what it means now to the so-called fight against corruption. If the people involved now, the members of Parliament who are receiving this money, those high-level members of society are involved in such a high and profile cases of corruption, what do you expect from the local people, these common people whom you're telling you should not solicit bribes on police or traffic officers on roads and what? I think this thing undermines all the efforts. These incidents undermine all the efforts of fighting corruption. It is actually legitimizing and promoting corruption. Thirdly, is also my concern is on why we are only targeting members of Parliament. In our anti-corruption laws, it is very clear that the giver and the receiver are both culpable in any offense of corruption. But Professor and my colleagues here, every time these things happen, we only speak about members of Parliament. What about the giver or the givers, if they are? I leave it to you, because
but I thought the giver oftentimes is not known. I thought the members of Parliament say, I got the money on the account.
whoever he or she
so maybe
is.
The bank as an accessory.
Whoever gives this
Also,
money.
maybe before you, Timothy and Tusiime, before you depart from that point, I would like to be educated. There is this whole thing, I know from a legal perspective and the bit of finance knowledge I have, that this money comes, say, from the consolidated account. Or if you're supposed to pay back this money, you are supposed to take it it should be taken to the consolidated account. Now, is there a mechanism? Can I walk, for instance, simply, can I walk into Bank of Uganda with 40 million and say, so I bank it in whose name?
That was the dilemma.
Because we are saying money, we are saying money.
Mm.
And because I remember, I think the 6th Parliament, not 6th, there was something like this, and Agri Awori on the floor of Parliament, you know, made a very interesting presentation. And actually some members came with money that day. And I think the media even captured their pictures. They were like, we have the money. Now, where? Because I think somebody tried to go to the speaker's office. The speaker said, this office does not receive money, you know. So I think it was the 5 million or something. So where should they take this money?
It is
Those who are taking it back.
Those who want to take it back. Because I want to encourage my MP to take it back.
No, it is difficult. It is very difficult.
Maybe you ask him to share with you.
It is very difficult because, like we said in the beginning, the people behind this whole scheme have mastered the way of concealing their footmarks. Even the members of Parliament will say, now, where will I take this money? We saw in the press conference the acting leader of opposition, Honorable Mwambutsya, directing the members of NUP to return the money from where they received it. But in essence, there's nowhere, because they actually, what I actually know, they don't even sign for the money. They receive cash and they don't sign anywhere for that money. So where would you take it back? So, but all in all, I want to disagree with some other opinions that we have to fault voters who are demanding, because some people think that this is about the pressure from the voters who demand much more from their members of Parliament. Me, I don't want to fault voters for doing it, because the whole thing starts from the top. When these bribes are given out, then the voters get to know that their members of Parliament or their leaders have received money. Then, because of lack, because they have issues, they have problems, then they will also need to what? Actually, I'm very concerned about now the narrative in the population. People actually saying, let them get to the money, let them bring the money. I don't know if Professor and the colleagues you have heard about that. People, the local people, the citizens, actually, some of them are saying, I don't know now what that means.
But remember when this lady was, she's still on that charge of corruption. This lady from Rwengo, is it Rwengo?
Yes, or
Namuju.
Yeah, when she was released on bail,
she
went to
received as a
celebrate.
hero.
She went to
In her
celebrate, actually.
constituency.
She had a celebration for that. And there was a speaker and the Honorable Chinyamatama. And they made a public statement that if you steal government money, public resources, and bring some crumbs to your people, it is okay. And the people cheered them and celebrated. So that is now the attitude.
Now
it
I
has
ask
become
you,
normalized.
I ask you, Professor, can you now blame the voters or the people for?
I will answer that one when he allows me.
So I also think that we should not now blame the people, because the people have problems. We know what people go through in their localities. They are going through various problems. We have now to put to task these leaders to stand and it's good we are heading into an election. I don't know if, like Mwambutsya has said, that the voters now should be very, very much more vigilant, because they have even issued a form from where they want their members to sign. If you publicly condemn this act, sign that you did not even receive the money, that this form will also be, the list will be published in the media for their members, that this person signed, he or she did not receive the money. I think that's another way of shaming those who are actually stealing from public coffers. We have a long way to go, but I still believe that we can do something. I don't agree with the doctor that we should abolish Parliament or do away with the legislative body, but we can hold these people accountable, especially in this time of elections. All those who received the money should not be elected back. If we decide so, possibly that can make a positive change in our on our road to democracy.
Thank you, Apollo, for sharing your thoughts. Professor, even as you consider to respond to his question, has the NRM fully entrenched the culture of political corruption? And if so, is there a cost to redemption for the country?
Thank you. What I wanted, the response I wanted to give him is actually also derived from the Monitor of yesterday, and that article of Charles Onyangobo, the tragedy of the commons. I don't know how many of you have read that tragedy of the commons. It is that Uganda is supposed to have a common pool of an account, but we have a tragedy. We have failed to realize, to appreciate that the consolidated fund or the account of government is a common resource. People don't look at it as a common resource. The president has said he's a judge, and Uganda is an estate, and the judge can give out to whatever he wants to whoever he thinks he can give. And it has become a tradition, it has become normal, it has sunk in the minds of the people that is the normal thing. That is the tragedy of the commons. And when you want to resist that one, to push back against that one as an individual, you will meet a block. I think Ziritwaura met it. There was a certain Ziritwaura who in, I think 1989 or thereabout,
Walked out
of Parliament because the government, NRM, had extended itself in power illegitimately, although they legalized it, but nobody supported him. The population left him alone. He got frustrated, and he came back and out of the movement. I think the last time I checked, he even stood on the movement ticket for the mayorship of Kampala. Kagabo took the money, returned it, and the people did not follow it up, did not support him. He got frustrated. He now converted to the movement. So I think there is a tragedy of the commons where the public purse, public property, public resources are not looked at as public, do not own that public. So we don't own this Uganda. That is what I've been saying, Dr. Tolit, that we need first to construct a nation. There is no nation state in Uganda. There is a hodgepodge of a country called Uganda, but there are no Ugandans. Now, as long as there are no Ugandans, and we have not created civic values that will create an attachment based on cognition, on reasoning, on rationality, but we are attached to the government through patronage. You know, there are people who are teaching patriotism, but I am not sure whether it is patriotism or patronage. You know, people are preaching patronage and calling it patriotism. It is not patriotism, it is patronage. So as our judge, if he can sit down and start parceling out his part of his estate to his bazukuru, you know there is this business of bazukuru. People don't take it seriously. They have not taken it seriously. May I take it seriously? You know, that Bazikuru thing is that we should be attached to the country emotionally. We should have an emotional attachment to the president, not cognitive attachment to the president through principled values like justice, equality, inclusion, participation, observation of human rights, respect for human rights, respect for participation, and things like that. But we are attached to the state through emotional attachment, then people will receive those crumbs, celebrate, and don't mind about the common past, which is the tragedy of the commons. I want to request my listeners to go and read that notion of the common, of the tragedy of the commons. They will understand what we are going through in this Kabetemere state, that anybody can harvest because it doesn't belong to the population. So your question was, is it all lost, or can we reverse this one? I think I will go back to my earlier assertion that we need to have non-elective politics. But before we do that, we must have a nation state. We should work towards building a nation state, whereby there will be ownership of this country, not through emotions, not ancestral, you know, the way the president is putting it, it is now an ancestral sentiment he's appealing to. Kind of that ethnic nationhood, not civic nationhood. Ethnic nationhood, that you get attached to the head of state through a sentiment, an emotional sentiment. You are a grandson. We are all now grandsons. And therefore, we should expect to get some of these Pakizites and these state whatever crumbs through our grandfather. Bazukuru. Bazukuru Wanambe now. We have become Bazukuru Museveni. And that is the situation. So, how do we redefine the state? How would we redefine the nation? I don't know whether some people can come together and we redefine this nation, and then we see how to sell that idea to the population. To redefine the nation in a civic way, not in an ethnic way, not an emotional way, not ascribed status, not ascribed values, but civic values, to create a nation. Now, when we create a nation, then we shall have that common, the common property. We shall have Uganda as a common property. We shall think of the public good. And when we think about the public good, then I think the population will hold those in government accountable. But as long as there is a tragedy of the commons, that the Uganda is not looked at in respect of public goods, but private goods, then individuals who come up and they find they cannot make a breakthrough will also say, let me also survive, let me get some crumbs from my jaja. And that is the challenge. So NRM came on that ticket of being revolutionary, patriotic, but it has now become patronage, and for the public good. But now they have shifted. There is you heard of DRA? There is DRA. There is a DRA policy. DRA policy, DRA is an acronym of Descendants of the Resistance Army. Descendants of the Resistance Army. So they are now trying to reproduce that tragedy of the communists. And Uganda is, we were liberated, and now there is an entitlement of, we killed the animal. Now there is an animal there. We are supposed to share the...
Is it still there?
It is now a carcass.
Yeah.
We are not sharing the cake, we are now sharing the carcass. And if we, the meat has gone. Now this carcass can, if you get some smelly bone somewhere, you know, when the Belgians were in Congo, Free State, especially I think when King Leopold was still there, or even thereafter, when the Africans who were working in the plantations would complain that they were not having good meals, they were not having meat, the Belgians would get bones of cows. They had been thrown somewhere. Then they would collect them somewhere in the windward side. They would put the Africans in the windward side, and then they would burn the bones, and then they would tell the Africans to smell the bones. Now, haven't you eaten the meat? Because the bones will have that smell of meat. So some Africans are now getting, Ugandans are now getting that smell, and they are feeling maybe happy that they are getting the crumbs. And how could the speaker and Honorable Chinyamatama address the people and say that stealing public resources and bringing some crumbs to you is the norm, and even people celebrated, instead of people getting the grass and throw it in the eyes of these parliamentarians, and more so the speaker? You are abusing national resources, and you are corrupt, and then you are celebrated. So as long as the citizens celebrate the corrupt, there is a tragedy of the commons. How to reverse it, I don't know. Maybe the NGOs will continue sensitizing the people to see the reverse. The question of law is out. To reverse the trend here is not going to pass through the law. Listen to this, my listeners and the gentlemen here. Chairman Mbao, a member of the executive, the Minister of Constitutional Affairs, is supposed to bring the constitutional-related bills to Parliament. He has told the nation, Chairman Mao, Minister of Constitutional Affairs, has told the nation that they went to the cabinet, and when they were talking about the electoral bills reform to be brought in Parliament, they removed it from him, the Minister of Constitutional Affairs, and they gave it to Chris Baryomunsi. So ordinarily, the bills should be brought to Parliament according to the ministry concerned, the related ministry. Now, bills supposed to come up with articles that would smoothen the electoral process so that it's not manipulated, have been removed from the Minister of Constitutional Affairs because he's not trusted and given to somebody else. What does that mean? What is the implication? What is the significance of this? The significance is that the likes of Mao are not part of the group of the entitled. No, they are not. You know, there is this common narrative in Uganda, I think. Tulya Muchintu and Tulu Muchintu. So I think there are people in the NRM who are in Chintu. Bari Muchintu, na yeti Bari Muchintu. Now those who are Kulya Muchintu are the ones now supposed to bring that bill before Parliament, not the relevant minister who is Mao. So Mao is just Ari Muchintu, na yeti Ari Muchintu.
Thank you, Professor, for your viewpoints. Tim, as we wind up, what is likely to be the practical ramifications in terms of the impact of this cash bonanza on the electorate ahead of the 2026 general elections?
So the electorate are just one of the groups who are likely either to be beneficiaries or victims of this. But also, you know, we have the bigger component in the discussion, the impact of this in our democracy, the impact of this in the rule of law. And I think that this definitely waters down, and it's just an affirmation of what has happened in the past, that legislation can be bought, oversight can be compromised, and the question of representation is largely based on interest. And what that means is that you have the individuals, you have the people out of the picture, and the interests of the political class supersedes. But to the people, I think that whether with looking at the previous elections, we've seen that the level of attrition rate has, by natural, has taken shape, where you have close to 70% of the incumbent members of parliament, not coming back. Whether whether there's been a bonanza or not, the bigger percentage of them go. And so definitely we see that most of and I think it won't be any different. The attrition rate most likely in the next coming election is likely to go higher. But also looking at it from the perspective that does this money actually trickle down to the people? And I think that's a discussion that has already been had by Prof. That the people today actually, one of the parameters for determining how a member of parliament comes back, they're totally different. But for me again, just to emphasize, I think that the dynamics in the political space is becoming extremely high. The stakes are becoming extremely high. Both from the executive side, you see that with the length of period that the NRM government has been in place, the stake for them to remain and to maintain the system is increasingly becoming high. And what that means is that what they have to take to maintain the status quo is high. And so what that means is that for what they should give out to maintain the status quo. So Isaac, really to emphasize, I think that the level of, maybe to respond to the earlier question, what informs the increase in what is being given to members? I think it also partly is on the amount or the resources that have to be used to maintain the status quo. And maintaining the status quo, you see that increasingly it requires a lot more. So meaning there will be a bigger, there's more that is being taken, and definitely as a reaction there will be more that is being given. And we anticipate to see an increased number of members of parliament in the next term. Most likely, quite a number of them may have more members joining the parliament. So that also increases, the cost of public service. So I think that really to emphasize and to say we are headed in not so good times, and that we have to see how the question of citizen agency can be taken back to the people.
Thank you, Timothy, for your able participation on the program. Let me also appreciate my other panelists, Dr. Tolit, Charles Atiya, Ndugu Apollo.
I must say that actually the people who should be very much concerned about this cash bonanza are the aspirants who want to contest against the sitting members of parliament.
Why so?
They now have a leverage. They have the money. This is money that can help them campaign and run their campaigns. So they should be speaking louder, the people who are actually planning to contest against the incumbents.
And of course, much appreciation to Professor Mwambutsya, Ndebesa, and many thanks to you, our esteemed viewers, for keeping us company from the start of this program up to its conclusion. Much appreciation to the production department for keeping us live on air. Our dear viewers, please engage us on our various social media platforms. We are on X, we are on Facebook, we are on YouTube, where you can watch this program and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll see you next time. Be blessed.